This video is sponsored by Flight Stars, located at Falcon Field in Mesa, Arizona. Hey, fellow aviators. Today we're going to talk about emergency procedures. If you think about it, we spend a lot of our training time dealing with emergency procedures, learning how to deal with them. Let's talk about some of the basics that we encounter when we have any kind of anomaly or emergency. There's a basic 3-step program we can think about that'll help us deal with any issue that we have in the airplane. And the first thing we always do, number one, is we always fly the airplane. That may sound basic and simple and obvious, but I can point to numerous accidents and incidents where, because of the nature of the emergency and the distractions, it didn't get done. And sometimes it even resulted in fatal accident. Probably the most famous of those would be Eastern Flight 401 in Miami, Florida. Take a look at that. You can see the NTSB reporter. Certainly look it up on the internet and read about the events that occurred there. So number one, fly the airplane, fly the airplane, fly the airplane. Super, super important. And you can even help yourself with a habit pattern around that at the air carrier I fly at. The way we accomplish that is the first thing that happens anytime we get any kind of emergency or a message, a status message. Whoever is flying the airplane states out loud, "My aircraft." And that's a reminder to the crew that the person who says that is going to continue to fly the airplane and basically do very little else. And the other person is responsible for grabbing the checklist and communicating and doing those kind of things. So it's a way to reinforce the attitude that we're going to really emphasize flying the airplane. If you're solo, of course, you can do the same thing. You can say it out loud to yourself. Fly the airplane, just to remind yourself and you don't move on too quickly. The second step, number 2, is your checklist reference. Once you have the airplane stabilized and you're in a position where you can deal with a checklist, then you can look and see if there's one that covers the issue you're trying to troubleshoot and solve. If there's not a checklist, don't make one up. So what I mean by that is, don't start reaching for circuit breakers and say, "Oh, Jim told me I could do this or do that," and all those jungle rules. They'll get you in trouble, especially with today's modern, more computerized airplanes. When you pull a circuit breaker in flight these days, you don't really know all the systems you're affecting. There are a lot of things that are going around behind the scenes, all the ones and zeros that only the computer engineers know about, way beyond my pay grade. And we just basically don't get into that game. We leave the circuit breakers where they are unless the checklist tells us to deal with the circuit breaker. Speaking of which, there's 3 things you can do with the circuit breaker. You can reset a pop circuit breaker. You can cycle, which means to pull out and push in a circuit breaker to reboot a computer, for example. Or you can pull a circuit breaker to deactivate a system. But again, basically the philosophy you should use is we don't do any of that unless a manufacturer or an operator's checklist tells us to do so. So step 2 again is we run the checklist methodically and carefully. And we don't make up a checklist if we don't have one. And then we just move on to step 3. And step 3 is pretty simple. Step 3 is we see, after we're done with the checklist, what the status of our airplane is. And we're going to have some things working maybe and some things not working. So we take that information, we evaluate it, we come up with a plan, and we execute it. The checklist may help us do that by saying things like land descent is practical. Well, that helps. That gives us a clue that that's what we need to do. Or it may not. There may not be any checklist guidance to tell us what to do after we've completed the checklist. So then it becomes aeronautical decision making, and that's what we get paid the big bucks for, right? So those are the 3 steps that'll help you deal with any emergency or anomaly in any airplane and in just about any situation there is. A few other things that we can discuss when it comes to emergency procedures is there's a startle effect. So, for instance, if you're flying a multi-engine airplane and you lose an engine, believe me, you're going to get this big boost of adrenaline into your system and you're going to be startled. And it's going to take some time to deal with that. So one of the things you can do is take a big, deep breath, slow yourself down. That helps you to mitigate the effects of that adrenaline. I was asked once if I thought we could train ourselves so that adrenaline dump doesn't happen. And my thought process is maybe if we were, I've said this before, maybe if we were Navy SEALs and we did extensive training with bullets going over our head, maybe we could train ourselves to not respond with adrenaline to those kind of factors. I don't know if we could or not, but we don't. And I think it's pretty unrealistic that we could get there in an airplane when we have those kind of issues. Rather, I think we should spend our energy realizing that we're going to get an adrenaline dump, and we should learn to mitigate it. So the problem with the adrenaline is going to be that it keeps us from doing deep thinking and analysis, and we pretty much have to rely on muscle memory and slow ourselves down. And the way to help mitigate that adrenaline is a big, deep breath, and just an exaggerated will really make a big difference. And it also slows you down so you don't start grabbing levers and knobs and switches and doing inappropriate things. Slow yourself down. Anything you can do as a habit to get yourself to slow down in most circumstances will help you out. The bottom line is we practice these emergency procedures. They really don't, when you get to the real emergency, and I've had plenty, they don't look like what we do in training. But what we do in training informs our decision making when we have the real emergency or the real anomaly and helps us get through it. So I want you to remember to think safe, act safe, and stay safe. I'm Safety Chip.